All right, I think we're live. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anyone in chat can hear me, just push 1. All right, got a confirmation. Thank you for the confirmation from Mega Montana. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 453, Tech Summit Day 1. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the communities tab. I'm streaming from Kigali right now. This is day 1 of the Tech Summit event. I just wanted to do a brain dump on what I learned today in terms of the event. So let me drop the link in the chat as well, because I think some people want to get on, in case they do want to get on. Mega Montana, thank you for the confirmation, and peace to you. I know a lot of people are not going to be on right now because the time difference right now, it's it's almost half past or quarter past 11 right now on a continent. And I just wanted to kind of throw this out there, throw the brain dump out there, do a brain dump for you guys. So today was preliminary discussions about startups on the continent, and startups in general, but more in particular on the continent. Very good discussions, very deep dialogue that was had. Met some new people, really dope people on the continent, man. They're from all over. They're from Angola, they're from Nigeria, they're from South Africa, they're from Kenya, they're from Uganda, they're from Rwanda, they're from Cameroon, they're from all over, man. And everybody just in one room, just converging on one agenda, man. It's really, really dope stuff, man. Anybody who doubts, Black people on a global scale that they can't come together, man, you would be very wrong. So let me Black Scorpion, what's up? Let me advance Carl real quick, and let me share my what I found today. So basically today's discussion was on legal masterclass on startups and regulatory business. And so what was discussed today was about creating a digital legal business structures, right? So creating digital legal business structures, how much do you control? Do you want to drive the process? And so the idea here is there's different types of businesses that can be developed out of a startup. Do you want to be an LLC or a sole proprietor? How do you go about funding? Funding is always key to the advancement of your startup. And so you create this sort of startup. For those who don't understand what a startup is, and just from a cultural standpoint, a startup is a company that has not turned a profit in the tech sector. And so Facebook for a long time was considered a startup. Okay. Facebook didn't start turning profit until 2015, 2016. So keep that in mind, that Facebook has been around since 2004, 2005, 2006. They had not turned profit until the last few years. So it's not uncommon that a startup would have those sort of numbers. Hey, what's going on, Nicole?
What's going on, Mike? What's going on, baby? Mike, can you hear me? Whoa, can you hear me? Hey, Mike, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you, man. How you doing?
Oh man, I'm good, man. I'm good. Can't complain.
All right, man. I see you down on the continent. I know a lot of people have a lot of stuff to say about what's going on over there, and they don't like you, though. I'd like to hear, kind of, your feedback on I don't like you, though, and kind of what's going on there. And besides all the whack talk that a lot of people might have here, who don't go anywhere, I'd like you to kind of break it down where you're on the ground, you're on the continent, kind of break things down for your kind of a initial kind of perspective of kind of what you've seen since you've touched down, since you've gone to the first phase of the conference, and kind of what are they talking about, and how are they receiving Afro Americans, or how are they feeling about ADOS coming there to work with Africans on the continent? Could we kind of get? I'm sure you're a very intelligent guy, so I know you probably have kind of inquired about some of that, and kind of what are some of the responses you've gotten? I'd like to hear that, Mike.
So the responses I gotten is that they're very welcome, open arms here. Any sort of contribution that you can make is actually very, very well received. And so the conversation that we were having today was just about business, getting businesses off the ground. And so tech startups and stuff like that. Actually, tech startups was really the main focus of the event. So I want to finish going over some of the notes that I've taken. So they basically talk about business plans. Every business plan you got to have is going to be half a decade planned out in advance. The type of tech business that you are building is going to matter in terms of structure and funding. And so a lot of the time, Black tech startups don't get a whole lot of investment because they have not had a proper, thorough examination and evaluation of their business plan. And so the hustle mentality is would very much taint your startup business. And so you don't want to come in with a hustle mentality. You got to have something that's going to be able to scale from year 1 to year 5 to year 10 to year 15 to year 20. We talk about some of the Asian businesses in Southeast Asia, like some of the ones coming out of China and Japan, Korea and Japan, and they have 500-year business plans. That's how far advanced they're thinking. And so we have to be thinking on the same level. You want to generate as much intellectual property as possible. So the more IP you generate, the more you can capitalize off of your intellectual property, the further your objective. So that's another area of notes that should be taken. So what's eligible for protection of your intellectual property? Any sort of work that you do, and that contributes to the overall benefit of the startup is actually going to be you're going to be able to protect it, right? So what happens with a lot of Black businesses is that they're kind of hole in the wall, not really fully registered businesses. And so they have a lot of great ideas. They may have a lot of great ideas, but they're not registered, they're not trademarked, they're not copywritten. And so that stuff gets siphoned off by somebody else. And then next thing you know, they're capitalizing off your intellectual property. So you got to be able to file patents. So the more patents that Black people file, the better. What else is going on? So you want to make sure that you're compliant as well. Compliance is really, really key here, because if you operate outside of compliance, which is what a hustle is, Black people talk about a hustle because it's just quick money, but there's no compliance involved. And that's why they're, you know, a lot of times they can't scale, because there's no real way to get investment from a venture capitalist or even an angel investor, because there's no structured compliance and regulatory standards being met. So make sure you're compliant, make sure you follow all the regulatory standards. So understanding corporate governance. So building a startup and operating it like with corporate governance is going to be really key to building out the business itself, building out the business structure. You don't want to end up like Enron with poor corporate governance. Accountability. You know, accountability flows up the stack and authority flows down the stack. So having some form of organization actually helps. Not having your books properly managed. So you heard the term of cooking the books. Well, that's what happens when you have a lot of you know, poor documentation and things like that, or even malicious documentation taking place in order to gain an advantage. That's called cooking the books. But that's sometimes what happens a lot in Black businesses, and that's why they can't scale. End up running into these issues.
Mike, question, as far as financing and this kind of business financing, because a lot of businesses don't have a lot. Are there who the bigger financiers that are coming into that area right now that you can see or you guys have talked about? It's primarily Chinese, others, any kind of idea on that?
So foreign investors, you're going to see a lot of Chinese investment. You're going to see a lot of European investment. So a lot of French, a lot of British investment. Not a whole lot in comparison to the Chinese, but you're going to see you're going to see their faces predominantly in these areas, because Africa has such a colonial past with, you know, if the Europeans, and especially the British for that matter, that it's without a doubt that they're going to show their faces here too. How much money is being distributed, I don't know. I haven't really seen it, but you're seeing a lot of the influence on the ground in terms of how, you know, in terms of you know, the thought process of how do you approach things. There's an African way of doing it, then there's somebody else's way of doing it. So let that marinate for a second. So you want to build out a legal counsel, record keeping, legal advisor, a secretary. You should always have a secretary. A secretary doesn't always include a woman. You need somebody that's going to be able to handle that executive order of operation from the front line. You usually see in the United States, you usually see something like executive assistant or administrative assistant. Those are the people who can actually deal with all the paperwork tasks that need to be done. Although we do use computers and whatnot, we do type up a lot of things and get a lot of notoriety, notary publics and stuff like that. That stuff still needs to be handled by somebody in a dedicated fashion. So.
Okay, yeah, that you know that answers a lot. But when you're there in Africa, what kind of community does it kind of seem like? Does it see where you are in Rwanda? Does it seem like this is something that Black America should have, or do we have it? I mean, how does the country, what's the feel of the country that you're getting, given someone of its past, where things, what happened, say, a generation ago, 20 years ago, to where they are now? What are you kind of seeing from your perspective, just coming in as a newbie?
This is the way we envision a Black community being run, right? We always talk about building the Black community. Black people in America always talk about building this Black community, but this is really how a Black community should be run. It should be run from a point where everybody's respectable, respectful to each other. You don't have a whole bunch of women cussing other people out, beating on their kids and stuff. Like, you don't see that type of stuff. You see kids going to school with the backpacks and walking a mile and a half to school, even 2 miles for that matter. You don't have to worry about people being kidnapped. Like some of the other people in the YouTube manosphere want to claim that their cousin was being kidnapped and stuff. You can't make false claims like that, and people, just ignore it. That doesn't happen. And so the culture here is just so cohesive. Everybody gets along with each other, even if they don't know each other. They're very respectful to each other. Women, you say good morning to them, they say good morning back. More likely than not, they're gonna say good morning first to you. If you don't say good morning to them, you're a rude bastard. That's how they consider you. You have no manners. And so that's going to determine your interaction is going to determine your longevity here. So my opinion is, if you want to see Black leadership in the Black community function in the way that it should, Rwanda is an example of that.
Wow, that's pretty good, and seemed like from how men interact and how women interact, they seem to be exceedingly they seem to be extremely civilized in how they deal with each other. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's no such thing as baby mama, baby daddy. You don't have that sort of issue over here. People know who their fathers are, who their mothers are. You don't have all of those craziness ideas. People acting out of character and whatnot happening. And so for me, based on my observation, this is how a Black community, if people talk about building a Black community in the United States, this is how it should run. You have police officers on every corner, and they're not just standing out there harassing people. They're standing there like statues, and if you get out of line, you're finished. You get out of line, you are finished. That AK is not there for nothing, man.
So if somebody come here, jump bad in the car, I'm gonna put a hot one in you, or use a bitch nigga and all that. Mm-hmm. Things are gonna go poorly for you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you won't make it long here. I don't even know what their jail system is like, but I'm pretty sure that most people don't know either, and they don't want to find out, right? So there's a urgency to just be polite to each other, because that's the only real way of diplomacy is to be respectful to each other. My position is that I think they have a lot of civil engineering development that needs to take place. Obviously, I mean, it's not going to look like Japan. It's not going to look like any sort of first world nation, but it's in a developing nation, and that's something that Black people should pay attention to. That you can build something if you really have the wherewithal to do it, man. It can be done. I think Paul Kagame has done a great job at running this country, running this Black community over here. People want to criticize the continent and say, people, there's no running water, people, there's no electricity, no utility services. That's bunk. That's absolute bunk. And even if it was, the way people live their lives, I mean, I'm from Barbados, so from the Caribbean perspective, it doesn't look all that much different. You got women driving around in Lexuses and Benzes and stuff like that. They doing well for themselves, but you don't hear that independent talk. They don't talk like that. So there's a lot of things a lot of luxuries that they're enjoying, but they're not gloating about it. They live within their means, is what I'm saying.
So a lot of those people here who are ignorantly talking out the sides of their buttholes and saying stuff like people can't read and the place smells bad and all this kind of craziness. The old colonial racist tropes that they have actually been littered with that white paradigm. You're not really looking at or really experiencing that there at this point in time. Is that correct?
That's correct. You can't use the white man got his foot on my neck or he got his foot on my throat, whatever the sort of nomenclature that people want to use, that you can't use that sort of jokingly around here, because you have Black leadership here. That's the name of the game. There is no white person standing over you telling you can't do something, or there's no racism. You don't have to worry about that. Like, you walk around freely, like this is your earth. This is how it is. And so you can't, if you're coming from the West and you try to come in there with, talking all that foolishness, man, that's not going to work. You'll be laughed out of the game real quickly. So you'll be going home packing real soon, because that mentality is not suitable for over here. You can get away with that in the United States and be a coward and say, well, I'm not doing this, man, because the cracker this and the cracker that. No, that doesn't work over here. If you got a plan, you got an agenda, and it's soundproof, people will support it.
Okay, so people, if you have an idea to do business there, potentially, we're just talking about potentially now. Are the Rwandans open to that idea to work with you and to have ADOS people coming over there, or is it, well, they don't like you though? What is it?
No, they want more Black Americans to come over. They want more. Not so much for your money, but because you come from a first world environment and you can see things differently that they may not be seeing. We had that discussion today. The main point that I took from the conversation is that they said we need more synergies between African Americans and Africans on the continent. Okay, that was discussed a few hours ago. There needs to be more synergy. There needs to be more cultural and economic development between the two, and industrialization between the two. There's things that we do over here that they just haven't done yet. There's things that they do over there that is unique to them and that we can actually learn from. And so, that's to answer your question in a nutshell. That's pretty much their open arms with that. You can get a visa. You can get a visa for 30 days. You can get it for 3 months. You can get it for 6 months. You can get it for a year. I don't know about the dual citizenship. I've heard about people getting dual citizenship. I don't know anything about that. I do know you can get a visa. It's $50 for a visa for 30 days. It's not bad. I think it's like $100 for like 3 months or something like that, but it's not bad. 20 grand, 25 grand takes you a long way here. You can ball out of control over here on that. Let me finish going through the notes real quick. And
well, I just want to say this. So kind of the wrap up is most of the crap that these people are talking here who haven't been around, they're basically talking out of the sides of their buttholes, and they really don't know what they're talking about. They're just popping off at the gums and are relatively clueless. Would that be somewhat of a rather safe assumption to say?
Yes, and so you're gonna see people that look just like you over here. There's brown people over here. There's Black people, dark-skinned, melanated people over here. You may see 1 or 2 light-skinned people walking around, but for the most part, everybody, from an ADOS standpoint, from an FBA standpoint, from an African American standpoint, would slot right into the continent. The only way they're gonna tell, the only differential thing to note would be your accent. You have a thick American accent, or you talk like a Yank or something like that. But nobody really cares. It's not like, oh, well, if you're in their taxi, they're gonna pull the taxi over and kick you out. It's not gonna happen, man. If anything, that may be a selling point for you, is that your ability to speak a different tongue, but come from a different perspective. So that's what they're looking at. Let me finish
Thanks,
going
Mike.
through these. Yep. Let me finish going through these notes. The probability of wrong is doing something unethical and unacceptable. So doing stuff illegal, trying to do that side hustle stuff, that's what they're kind of talking about. That doesn't work over here. Contractual agreements, you want to have things documented. Investors want to see SLAs and standard terms. So they like to see service level agreements and stuff like that, things that look really tight and legible, that they can understand. Uh, so there's 12 steps to the startups. Demanding price price valuation. So it's determined by what the investors invest into it. So if you don't get a whole lot of investors investing into your startup or your idea, then that's kind of an indicator that your idea is not really soundproof. Um, invest into yourself is the second step. So make sure you invest into yourself first and foremost. Education, development, personal development, things like that. Number three is failure to build an investor network. So what happens here with Black people in America, they tend to be social network poor, meaning that they don't have a broad range of human resources to leverage for their own enrichment, and so they tend to get locked out of certain social groups and activities because they don't have that. Um, they don't have a broad network. And in this perspective, from talking about a startup, you have investor networks that Black people just don't have access to, and so you didn't ensure to broaden your investor network. So invest into your um, so build an investor network first, and then you should actually start moving out from there. Number four is a pitch deck. So basically your elevator pitch. What is your elevator pitch? Can you sell your idea in 5 minutes or less? You're sitting on the elevator, you meet this, you run into this VC, or you don't even know if he's a VC or not, or she's a VC or not. And what's happening here is the opportunity that you have to actually sell your idea, you fail to do that within an elevator ride or within a standing of a train or something like that. A 5 minute pitch of your idea is very important. So you got to be able to nail it down in 5 minutes or less. Number five is not having an MVP. So an MVP can help you build a product. So an MVP is a person who's very experienced in product development. And what you want is that person to help build out that product for you that you don't know. You don't know how a phone may work. You don't. I mean, you want to sell phones, but you want to build your own phone, but you don't really know how that works. So you need somebody who can look at it from a third eye and say, who's experienced in that area. You want to build yourself up around SMEs. That's what the MVP does. All right, number six is the amount to be raised. So you want to raise capital, but you want to raise enough so that it's sufficient for your startup, and not so that you're just floating around with money. The idea isn't to to be throwing money around like Floyd Mayweather. You want to actually utilize that money to build up your to build up your business. Debt versus equity. Debt investing and equity investing, those are two different sort of investment schemes and models. And so you don't want to run yourself into the red. That would be debt investing. And then you also want to have some equity as well, so that you can negotiate better on next series funding. So series A, B, C, D funding. Seventh is internal planning and alignment. So internal planning and alignment basically have a mission internally and structure it around. I know Complex has talked about this many times. He's demonstrated this in the past. So internal planning and alignment is very important for your startup. Not connecting on a personal level. So if you're not connecting on a personal level with somebody that you're doing business with, especially from an investor standpoint, from a VC standpoint, from an angel investor standpoint, what is the problem? You have to figure out what the problem is. Is it a personality difference, or is it an agenda difference? So you got to separate the two. A is focusing on the money quality money, but quality capital versus quantitative capital, right? So don't focus too much on money, but the investment into the quality area rather than the quantitative capital. So you don't want a $2 billion investment or a $200 million investment, but you only have like a $10 million product. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. You want to use the money wisely every single time so that you're not running into a deficit. Familiarity with legalese. So you're going to need somebody who can, a lawyer or something like that, a tech lawyer, someone who understands law and tech to really understand why, how to maneuver your tech startup from a legal standpoint. If you can't speak the language, then you need to find somebody who does. Bootstrapping. Um, Bootstrapping, although it's an old term that gets used for Black people, pull yourself up by your bootstrap, but actually coming to the table with something. If you come with 20% of the funding for your startup, that actually looks good to investors, venture capitalists. And so 20% of that $100,000 that you're looking to have invested into you is actually going to be really good. That means you came out of your pocket and that you're really serious about this. So don't be afraid to dip into your 401k or dip into your IRA or something like that. That's actually going to be really good. And don't be afraid to look for grants from the SBA for minority business loans. I think you do have MBDA, so Minority Business Development Association. I think they do have that. So you can actually go there and try to kind of get yourself a grant if you're a veteran in the United States, Black veteran. You do have access to micro grants and micro loans and stuff like that. You can get access to that stuff from the SBA, so take advantage of that. 11 is the truth. So the first two rounds of funding are false indicators of success. So don't base your success of your company on how much those first two rounds of investment was, right? So just because people put some money behind you the first two rounds doesn't necessarily mean your business is going well. That's a false narrative, and you shouldn't really use that as an indicator. So funding is actually a proxy of investors' interest and not the business, right? So they're invested into you because they believe in your objective or your product, but not because they like your business. And the last one is seed investment versus series funding. So know the difference between the two. Everybody who starts up usually gets seed funding first, but then series funding usually comes long after, if you make it that far. And so that's what's going on for today. Have very interesting discussions. I urge people who have not visited the continent to actually visit the continent for yourself and don't believe the hype and the effery that you hear from some people push within the manosphere. You got some people talking about you're running away from America, and they're always going to throw tomatoes at you because they really they're not building anything themselves, so they can sit behind a keyboard in a live stream for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hours woofing about things, and they ain't doing nothing. I'm over here on the continent and I haven't had anybody hating on me. I've had open arms from people, even at the at the airport and in the embassy. Where have you been, brother? And things like that. How come you're just now getting over here? You should have been over here a long time ago. Those sort of reactions. And I'm surprised to hear that because a lot of people have said that they don't like you though. And so that my experience here has trumped all of those sort of criticisms about the continent. I haven't been across the whole continent, but this is supposed to be the hottest place right now for investment on the continent. And if you're telling me that these people feel this way, I don't believe it. I just had long conversations and when I was at dinner, in the hallways. They were very open arms and very welcoming, very respectful. They don't even curse. I haven't heard not one person curse here since I've been here. Not one. And I've been around probably about 300, 400, 500 people in the last 24 hours, and I have not heard not one African curse. Women or men have not heard not one of them curse. Um, and so that speaks to their way of thinking. Um, they have a different way of how they handle aggression. Um, so
I think that's very key. I think a lot of people here who don't go anywhere, it's easy for them to say whatever they can say, but when you have
mhm,
someone who's there and taking a look at the situation, like I've traveled many places, that's why when I hear people say, "Oh, this is what it is," yeah, if you haven't been there, you don't really know. And then when you start to travel around, you can kind of see what people are really thinking. Um, and it's great to see you over there in Rwanda and talk, and looking at this because I'm also I would also be very interested, since you have the the African phone. I think there's one YouTuber saying, "Don't support the phone and get away from it. It's not an African product," and talking real greasy. But yet, here you are there in Africa, and there in Rwanda. And I certainly would like to hear some follow up with you, and when you get a chance to maybe look at Marwa and see, is it really an African phone or is it some strange foreign thing that this individual was screaming about on YouTube, which I feel was probably fairly ignorant as well. That's just
mhm.
what I'm taking. That's because I see a lot of ignorance here. So I'm going to safe to assume that it was fairly ignorant because this is a person who's not there, but you're there on the ground. So I certainly would like to get your take on that, a much more learned take and a more aware take on it from the standpoint of you being on the scene and kind of giving us some feedback on that as well. But yeah, it's great stuff, Mike. I'll definitely be getting out to the continent in the future, and
Mhm.
I think what you're doing. It's kind of setting a lot of stuff, even in the manosphere and Black YouTube, kind of correct because there's too much crap talking from people who have very little information, and we definitely want to talk to people who are more informed and
Mhm.
who are there speaking from a level of experience. I think that always gives them a better look and a better insight onto things.
Yeah, yeah. I've very rarely see my experience in the last 24 hours has been very welcoming, man. People not so much just from a taxi perspective, like going from point A to point B, but you walk down the street and people just like, brothers nod their head to you, that head nod that you see in the United States, brothers do the same thing over here. Um, how you doing, my brother? Yes, my brother. Good day to you. Good afternoon, brother. It's very it's different experience. It's a cultural shock for a lot of guys, man. For at least for if you're coming from the West, you've never seen that before. In the States, if look at somebody for more than 5 seconds, man, they're ready to fight you. That doesn't happen here, man. That doesn't happen here. So um, you got it. They want more Black people to come over here and be a part of the development of what goes on here. It doesn't cost a lot of money to live. You can live pretty well if you transfer your funds right. Um, I think soon you're going to start to see more banking systems, more governance, financial governance start to take place because of the new Continental Free Trade Agreement and some of the stipulations that comes with that. Each country has its own body of principles and statutes and things that they abide by, and so not all of them going to be one for one the same, but at the same time, um, they're cryptocurrency is going to take over at some point. I mean, well, I shouldn't say they're going to take over. They're going to be visible on the ground. People are going to be like, yeah, this cab ride or this you know, this jacket, these heels, these sneakers are going to cost 20,000 XRPs or something like that, tokens or something like that. So they're mixing and matching technology in their culture. Like they're not ready to give up their 100% of their culture just for technology. They're actually leveraging the technology for their own advancement, not to be cool, not for the cool factor. What I see in the West is a lot of people are glued to their phones and they don't really have um, they can't really think for themselves. You know, all of their talking points are usually just regurgitated from somebody else within social media, and so they get a lot of their education from memes on Instagram, which is unfortunate because here you can't come over here and argue with these people. They know exactly what they're talking about, and the only thing that's really holding them back is really the economic investment. And so we have to start thinking about this as well of um, how do you fight poverty and how do you even come up with a better economic mechanism so that people can actually, or a framework that people can actually leverage to their advantage. Taxation and things like that hold people back. So getting around that, um, allowing startups that actually contribute to the development of the continent is going to be very key. And not taxing these people. You don't want to tax, you know, the hard workers, you know, the people who are actually contributing. Um, and so those are some of the discussions that we've been having.
No, that's great stuff, man. That's great stuff. And how many more days you gonna be there, Mike?
I'll be here till Friday. I'll be coming back later on this year though. Now is a good time to come. It's not too hot. It's only about 65, 70 degrees. It rained a few times today, but it cooled down. You know, it's not muggy. It's very livable. So you don't have that sort of mugginess that you would get in America with uh, you know in the summertime when it's just absolutely hot. I thought it was going to be extremely hot, but it's actually 65, 70 degrees, and that's actually not bad. Um, Even when I was out earlier having dinner, it was actually pretty nippy. I was surprised at that. The continent is nippy. What is this?
Hold on, Mike. Now let me ask you, aren't you worried about lions and tigers running, chasing down the streets? Is there anything like that? Anybody chasing after you with spears or anything?
I'm looking out my window right now. It's only 11 o'clock, and the streets are dead. Just an hour before we even had this live stream, the streets are crowded. There's nothing out there right now. Nothing is moving. Not even if there's mice out there, if there's rats out there, they're not moving out there either. So it's pretty locked down out here.
Okay, I was just being facetious because I was just saying, so many negative tropes you have there of Africa and all this, and
Mhm.
we're just glad to hear something, some real truth, and from those who were there, because when I was in Angola, Rwanda, and so forth, I was there. It was a totally
Mhm.
different game than what I was told, and I went there and saw a whole different type of situation,
Mhm.
and that's the only place I've been in Africa so far, and I want to see more of it. So I know that there's a lot more, a lot of things going on there.
Mhm.
I have a very good friend, Joe Malungo. He's in Kenya, and so forth. But you have a lot of really good stuff kind of going on. But I just don't like a lot of stuff that I've heard people speaking about over the year, and it's just good to hear someone who's got the right perspective. Very, very disturbing about a lot of stuff that I've heard coming out of African American, ADOS American people's mouths, and it's disturbing, and it's good to put some proper perspective on this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think what's gonna happen probably within the next couple of years between now and 2022, you're gonna start to see um a lot of vertical integration. So you're gonna start to see stacks get developed. And when I talk about stacks, I'm talking about like information technology, or what they call ICT over here, 4G, 5G rollouts. 4G is very spotty over here, but 5G will probably be the go-to sort of platform for communications. Uh, and so there's a lot of opportunity for Black people to come over here from America and actually be a part of the development process, because you got to have your the reason why I talked about tech startups and things like that today is because you got to have your ducks in a row. And what's happening here, and I see this in the manosphere a lot of guys are just talking about the onesie, twosie hustle. Move this, get that, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. It's not about cash flow. It's not about cash flow. We talked about that earlier today. It's not about cash flow. It's not about how much cash you got. Nobody don't care about that. If your money isn't being leveraged for the advancement of the collective, they don't, that doesn't matter to people. You can't just be, you can't be on an island on your own. That doesn't work like that over here. And so there's gonna be a lot of integration between, just people who flew all the way from Britain who have moved back to the continent just to contribute. I met some really dope Nigerian women today, man. I don't even want to go into it. I'll say that for another day, man. There's a whole lot of things that's discussions that are happening that I don't see that happening in Black America at all. They're just not having those discussions. Not in the manosphere, not anywhere I've ever been. They're not having these discussions about building up actual infrastructure, building up community, building up society. What kind of society do we want? And they're actually doing it. They're actually doing it. So it's not like, oh, they're just talking just to be talking behind a keyboard. No, they're actually having these conversations in person, and they're heading on each other saying, yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that, my brother. Yes. And here's my business card. Everybody has a business card because everybody's doing something. So if you come to the continent empty-handed, that means you're not moving right. And that's what people are looking at. How are you moving out here? Having a barbershop, that might be cool in the United States, but over there, nah, they talk about game-changing sort of businesses that's going to drive growth. They want growth. That's what they're looking at. They're looking at growth. Can your business provide growth? And what's happening here is Black people in America are stuck at the hustle mentality. Move, buy sneakers, sell sneakers, barbershops, liquor stores. That's all they're thinking about. They're not really thinking about effective change that's going to actually enhance the lives of other people. Let me answer this question real quick. Mega Montana says, do you think you will get the opportunity to meet Paul Kagame? No, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think if you come with see, we talked about this last year, 2019. You have to, in order to meet somebody like that and make it worthwhile, you have to come with a really soundproof plan that they're going to pay attention to. They're going to say, stand back, this nigga's ill. This nigga's ill. That's the sort of perspective you got to have. When I spoke today from a cybersecurity standpoint, as a cybersecurity professional, I sucked all the air out the room. Now everybody wants to give me their business card. You see how this works? It's because you spoke with conviction. A lot of times brothers don't speak with conviction because they don't really know what they're talking about. Guys like Ulysses, Complex, he can come over here and he can be a micro transportation consultant. He can be a part of all of that. All he has to do is travel back and forth 2, 3, 4 times a year. Stay in communication, stay in connection. He can come out and design a whole entire blueprint for them and actually be the head of that, the consultant, lead consultant. Guys like Todd City, diesel technician, he can be a diesel technician, CDL consultant for that part of the continent, because they're going to be moving a lot of goods in the next year and a half, if not more, if not sooner. Guys like MOT can come over here, and I think he's been over here. He can be a consultant in many of these areas, if not be a microfinance or angel investor into a lot of these startups. Handle logistics, refrigeration and stuff like that, which is something that the continent lacks. And so there's a lot of opportunity that's coming out of all of this. Nursing, they are starving for nurses over here. There's not enough nurses to go around over here. And so you get paid big bucks if you're a nurse. If you're a registered nurse, if you're an RN by Western standards, you can run multiple hospitals by yourself. That's the sort of game that's being run over here. What else, man? Renewable energies, electricians. If you're an electrician, you can wire up, residential housing standards for electricity. You're a hot ticket on the market. Plumbing and gas fitting, master plumbers and gas fitters. You can do that. You're a hot start. You're a hot shot over here. And so what's happening here is not just about the physical labor, but it's about the policies that need to be developed and the statutes that need to be developed and the regulatory standards that need to be developed. And because of that, they don't have enough people to actually do these type of things. It's not just here, but all over the continent. There's a brother who's here from America who's a nurse. He's a head nurse of multiple hospitals in Tanzania. He wasn't even looking for a job. He just happened to be wearing his scrubs one day in Tanzania, and someone asked him, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a nurse over here. Would you be able to have a conversation with me further? Before you know it, he's managing 3 hospitals. Head nurse over here. That's what he's doing, and living like a king. He doesn't have a car. He has a Mercedes that he pays a chauffeur to drive him around with. He calls him when he's ready. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity, man. I think that cats are really sleeping on this, man. The brother I met today from the United States, he's over here. He's a blockchain consultant. Stuff that we've been talking about, for a minute. We've been talking about that since day one. Blockchain consultant. This brother who's a nurse, man, he's a head nurse of 3 hospitals, in a couple of clinics. He makes probably $200,000 a year, but he lives like a king. A lot of land, housing, has a maid, he has a groundskeeper, living like a king. I don't think, the women I met, they're lawyers, educated in the UK, educated in Canada, came all the way back to the continent to work. They talking legal tech stuff. That's why they talk about legalese. Do you know the logistics of the legal frameworks that need to be implemented for your startup? That's the conversations that they're having. You don't want to get shut down by regulatory officials because you did something wrong. Yeah, Dr. Phoenix, nursing is really big over here. They don't have enough nurses. Not enough. Faber says there'll be governmental cryptos though. Yeah. I don't see a sovereign nation allowing any old programmer to come up with something that can undermine their financial system. It's not about undermining the financial system, right? So in Cuba, you have 2 currencies. You have a state currency, and then you have a ground currency. And so what they call a convertible. And so the ground currency is what the people use on the ground, and then the state currency is what they use for trade. And so you can have 2 different currencies without actually it impacting your bottom line. What's going on, Josh? Faber asked, Mike V, will you be recording some of the sessions you attend to share with us when you get back? No, I'm not. We don't record. So that's a part of the policy. You're not supposed to. You're supposed to take what you've learned and keep some of the other stuff private. You don't want to take someone's ideas and stuff like that and spread it out there, especially if it hasn't been copywritten or trademarked. So no, I won't be doing any of that.
Well, this is a lot different than some of the stuff I've heard going on over the Mansfield over the last day or two. Boys, this is a much different game right now. This is what I'm into. The other stuff is just it's anyway. Great stuff, Mike. So it looks like there's going to be a lot of opportunities in Africa, huh? Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be major opportunities. You're talking about protecting endangered species through blockchain development and IoT and drones and things of that nature. Just a whole lot. There was talk today about agriculture. Agri-tech is what they're calling it. So the ability to leverage technology for farming on small areas and having these sort of using the technology to aid the farmers and not actually replace the farmers. The ability to know when to irrigate land and when it's going to rain and when you should plant seeds, and using drones to crop dust and things like that it's going to be very significant. Tractors and stuff like that. The leasing of tractors and stuff like that. And so agriculture is going to be really huge, especially with the legalization of hemp and cannabis development. That's going to be really huge. Greenhouses, you're going to need these greenhouses in certain areas that don't have 100% growth and sunlight and things of that nature. You're going to have to be able to grow on every cubic meter of land available. You're going to have to be able to do that. So utilizing every single square foot is going to be very instrumental. Renewable energies and stuff like that as well. The ability to live off grid is going to be important. So tiny houses, people are talking about tiny houses now. That's a discussion. So yeah, Jibba Jabba, is there a space for agriculture, hydroponics? Yep, that's a big discussion that's been had today. Agriculture, agri-tech. Turning small spaces into vertical farms and stuff like that. Pharmaceutical industry, being able to leverage holistic medicine and stuff like that. Yeah, Flashwave is he's talking Flashwave says, my friend is a consultant for a company that sells equipment on the continent. He's extremely successful because all his competitors are Chinese or white. Yeah, they want to do business with others. They want to do business over there. So we have Dr. Phoenix on the panel.
This is my question here real quick. Where the hell would somebody get, they don't like you though? I don't even want to mention these people name. They don't like you over there. Mm-hmm. What the hell are people talking about?
I cannot even begin to speak to that.
Dr. Phoenix, what's going on? What's going on, brothers? Now I had to get a little piece of this, man, because I swear to you, man, from day one, I've been talking about the lack of a healthcare infrastructure on the continent. And mm-hmm. This is my experience knowing doctoral students of, not just nursing, but, physicians, medical students, even at my school, they were doing this when I was an undergrad. They're doing it now at my school that I'm at now. They're sending students over to the continent. I mean, this is big business, man. And unfortunately, it's mostly the PWIs that are funding these programs where they're building out many of these local community hospitals and clinics where they're bringing in, they're having white experts coming in, from the U.S. and also from these other Western countries, and they're helping to build out this stuff. But just from folks that I know, this is big business. I mean, brothers, there's a huge opportunity for black, not just brothers, but black people in general. You know, midwifery is something that is big over in Africa.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
you ain't got a whole lot of black females, for example, running around here that are nurse midwives. I only know like maybe 1 or 2. And but again, you have these programs that are huge, and certainly there's certainly more practitioners of more holistic medicine than obviously what you see here in the Western countries. And so, it makes it very prime for folks who are in something like nursing or even physicians, if you're in primary care, stuff like that. It's a prime example. I mean, even the articles that, you've covered over the last few months talking about folks who have got backgrounds in genetics, your life sciences, folks who got PhDs. And I know there are brothers in the manosphere who have doctoral degrees, and yet, you don't really hear these kinds of conversations. And it's unfortunate because I think a lot of the conversations that happen do tend to be around very rudimentary, very base level sort of thinking. This is even coming from, at least from what I observe, from brothers who know better.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I see 2 dislikes came up here already. You've got 2 dislikes, so I find it kind of interesting that talk about the continent, talking about somebody there, and some people are not liking it. So there's going to be pushback. I can see that there's going to be pushback, I think, with people talking about going there and doing business. But we're going to have to change some of that mindset. There's going to be some of that mindset is going to have to be changed, because a lot of the crap that's being talked here is illegitimate. It's unsubstantiated, and it's based a lot of more ignorance, and we got to get past that.
No, what's interesting about what Dr. Phoenix is saying is that the building out these small clinics. Yeah, mobile clinics are very popular on the continent now. The ability to deliver healthcare as a service is very instrumental. They talked about this with China recently, this week, that China Zoom, the product that we're using to stream, actually boosted almost 20% in stock value because the Chinese and other governments are using it for telemedicine now, for telehealth.
Well, here's the really concerning part. We already know that you have been over in Asia, and yet we know that the Chinese have made significant inroads in Africa. So just imagine, you're having an entire continent of people who have no herd immunity. So if you're in healthcare, you know what that means. They have no immunity to something like the coronavirus, but yet China is supplying a major component of their professional healthcare workforce. And not even just that, the research that happens. I mean, all the articles we cover from the NIH, Western, these universities over in Western Europe, where they're sending, they're getting these, they're trying to recruit students to train them, to give them PhDs, to give them medical degrees and the sort. And you bring them back, and this is obviously one of these things where I've had lauded in the past talking about brothers being involved in biotech, specifically in areas of genetics. There's such a lack of people such a lack of professionals and folks with the skill set who can do genome analysis of people. We know there's all kinds of problems related to your health on the continent. We already know about the HIV. We know about
Dr. Phoenix. You got a shortage of them here. What's up, Dr. Phoenix? You got a shortage of them here in the United States.
Yeah, and but here's the interesting thing about Africa is that because there's little to no competition, it's easier for you to go to Africa and build out a biotech company, and it can be international.
For sure.
And you're not paying a whole lot of taxes. You're not paying any taxes for that matter.
And that's, again, like I said, this isn't to criticize brothers, but I'll say this much, man. I've been to the continent many times. I first traveled to the continent when I was about 21. And you know what? A lot of these brothers are just kind of getting new to this whole travel game and to the, going to the continent. I've been on this shit for well over a decade. you know,
Mhm.
well over. So, you know, I'm not new to this game, and I don't think a lot of the brothers here, certainly, you know, within the Black Brain Trust, are new to this. I mean, I think the problem is that you got a lot of Johnny come lately, and they're trying to tell brothers what it is now. You got so many brothers out here been doing this stuff for a very long time. I know
See,
plenty of brothers twice my age. They
see,
run around, you know, setting to Africa and countries across the globe now for decades,
Mhm.
and they move
you see,
quietly, and they get
yeah,
they.
you know the problem is, Dr. Phoenix. Here you got a lot of Johnny not come at all, but yet they're talking like they've been all over the joint and don't know anything. And I think that's a big part of the problem that I think we're hearing a lot of people speculating and saying a lot of things, but they don't know. And that's when I say when you have the, you know, you have the ignorant trying to, you know, talk to the uninformed. It's you got a problem. So I think this is the big difference. And you're right. There are a lot of guys who have traveled around. I have not, like I said, I've only been there once. I have not been on the continent a lot, and that's something, a place I got to be a lot more. I had a pretty good friend from Uganda. He was like, "Carl, you got to come over here, man, because you don't understand. You got to come over." He told me this 10 years ago. 10 years
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
Man,
You know,
I was with a Moroccan woman for over 5 years. I spent at least 2 of those years living in Morocco and traveling through Western Africa from there. So
Mhm.
this was back in, like, you know, over a decade ago. And so, you know, I say that to say that, look, you know, these were issues then, and they're certainly have been exacerbated now, especially given the fact that, you know, you think about some place like Africa where we have not heard the coronavirus, for example, having an impact, where we haven't heard any cases coming out of Africa. Think about a coronavirus in Africa, what that would do. We're talking about we're already talking about a pandemic now. Imagine how it would spread in a place like Africa where people have no immunity, a weak healthcare systems and infrastructure, not enough healthcare professionals to take care of potentially sick people, and certainly the life-threatening complications that coronavirus can cause. But yet, you know, we got all these folks walking around with whatever, and you know, there's the ability for you to go over there and really make a name, really make your own mark on the continent. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the very definition of manifest destiny. The virtual Wild West. Well, yeah, I don't want to call it the Wild West, but you get what
Wild
I'm saying.
East.
Yeah, you know, you have the ability where you got to pretty much the ability to make an industry where there is none.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you bring that up because they were actually looking at how things are done in the West, right? How the National Institute of Health and many other agencies that's involved in the grant funding and things like that. They're saying, well, how can, you know, maybe African governments can actually learn from this. And so they're starting to look at this today, that they're looking at how this can actually be implemented on the continent, right? So if you can come up with let's say your MOT, you have this big 18-wheeler tractor trailer, how do you convert something like that into a mobile healthcare system in case of a crisis, right? How do you even turn something like that into a healthcare as a service on wheels and actually be instrumental in aiding the government and filling up that last mile, right? And you're going to also need nurse practitioners and things like that. There's not enough to go around on the continent, and that's part of the issue. And so they need to figure out a way. They're trying to figure out a way to how do we properly fund this without throwing the money out the window.
But I was reading from the American Academy of Nurse Practitioners. I was reading one of their monthly publication, and so they have an article where they're running a trial over in Tanzania, because I heard you earlier speaking about someone you met from Tanzania.
Yep.
But they're running a trial with nurse practitioners over in Tanzania because they have a very limited number of physicians and nurses, and specifically folks who can do primary care, to be the principal primary care providers in Tanzania, and they're having very good success. So these are white folks who are doing this. These are these big PWIs that are going into the goddamn continent, and they're sending obviously their people over there and they're helping to build out, what could potentially be the foundations for a healthcare system that can certainly be built upon.
They're expecting the population here to grow up to 2 billion people by 2060.
Well, Africa has one of the largest populations of people under 25.
Yes.
I mean, this is the silliness. See, earlier you mentioned about brothers just getting up here and actually talking with some conviction. I can say what I say because I know what the hell I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of unnerving to a lot of brothers when you meet other brothers who actually know what the hell they're talking about. And the fundamental problem is like, look, I get what folks, what black, what a lot of the ADOS or FBA or whatever you want to call yourself these days, I get what their gripes are, but this is not about what your personal issues or vendettas you have against people is. I'm looking at, if you got everybody in the world running to Africa, why the hell aren't we?
Right. And so the discussions that we had today was that maybe we should start having these same conversations in the West, for Black people, Black Americans. The exchange of ideas, Dr. Phoenix, was flowing like crazy. Even long after the event was over, about an hour and a half, people were still bouncing ideas off each other. Exchanging cards. You get somebody like Complex Design on the continent. He would be a micro transportation consultant. Easy. He can go around to each and every sub-Saharan African government and say, this is what I'm looking at from the top-down perspective, from a high level. This is how the transportation, micro transportation system should be designed out, and here's how we're going to do it, and we're going to manufacture it here, and we're going to bring jobs here. Somebody like that is going to be a rock star.
Mike, that is the plan, bro. Dead on it.
I mean that's
complex.
What's going on, brother? I mean, that's exactly what I am very much for the idea of Black men being able to go to a continent where you get to pretty much make the life you want. I mean, I'm not saying that you can't do it here in the U.S., but I am saying that you literally get to go there and be a damn celebrity if brothers desire it. You get to be the titan of industry.
Mm-hmm. I think that's preferable because, quite frankly, what's going on here is getting a little tired. Things have to be expanded. We definitely got to expand on. And I think that's where, as we know, that's going to be the areas of a lot of growth. You got a lot, and there's got to have to be some separation. Some of these brothers here, and these sisters, they're finished. They're not. They ain't about moving forward. We can see a lot of this. We see a lot of that even going on here in this sector of YouTube. They ain't about that life.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to have those who are about that life, who are really gonna move over and start to make some real strong connects and hey, not only build more connections, but with that, you can start to build wealth as well. Not say that's the only thing that we're just looking to do, because there's a strong social connection as well. But certainly, it's a way of building wealth, and not a lot of people can get along with it. Like I said, I see some dislikes that have already come down on this video. I mean on this stream, and I think people don't like hearing about, some of what's going on elsewhere.
But somebody like Dr. Phoenix would come over there with his PhD in nursing, and he wouldn't even be doing anything. He would just be the guy who oversees the continent, from the AU perspective. He'll be the AU healthcare minister or something like that.
What's up, fellas?
What's going on, Engineering Cannabis, man?
Hey, what's going on, sir?
Engineering Cannabis, what's up?
Yeah.
Okay, Mike, I see you enjoying Africa then.
Oh man, I love it, man. I love it.
Good.
Yeah.
In terms of the opportunities,
mm-hmm.
as you all said, it's true. The opportunities are there. Then taking the knowledge from the West to the continent is very vital. And like I'm saying, like I deal with cannabis, and I see cannabis growing into the global market. And where tech and cannabis coincides. I see it going into Africa and all that places. And I'm even looking at looking at other places like South Africa who already have legal medical cannabis. So the opportunities in tech and cannabis and other aspects of medical and healthcare, it's only going to grow more and more in the continent. And you also have opportunities like the ECOWAS, where the western side of Africa is basically joining forces where you can basically access each country easily. And with that, you basically, if you open up a hub in maybe Nigeria or Ghana, you might even have access to more countries easily just by opening a hub in one of these countries just because of the ECOWAS. So the opportunities are boundless, and the human resources are also growing each day. So
I mean, you know, I think that's an excellent point. You know, given that I'm in school now, I'm in med school, and given all my years of experience in healthcare, I can tell you without a doubt, there's quite a few brothers in this space that have quite a bit of experience in healthcare. They can make an indelible mark on the continent in these various countries. And unfortunately, I don't think we think about sort of the long game. I think a lot of things with Black folks tends to be short-sighted and very myopic. We don't think about the impact that that really just human capital, your base of knowledge, how powerful that can be in a place like Africa on the continent. The knowledge and the skills that you bring is the capital. Obviously, you're gonna need some liquid capital, in terms of cash. Yeah, of course. But I think that's very doable if you get enough brothers who are all on the same page.
And capital can go so far, but you also need that knowledge and need that experience.
Yeah.
If you have capital and no knowledge and experience, the respect for you in Africa is not going to be there. So a combination of capital and knowledge is crucial. And basically, in the continent, the opportunities, again, like I said, are boundless. And we in the West, especially in the United States, you have the ability to absorb so much knowledge in the United States. I mean, you can open up a YouTube channel and start looking at how to code a blockchain. You can go into libraries and study hours and hours on AI and all that, and it's free and it's accessible. And that's why that's one of the reasons I like this country too. It's accessible, and you can build as much as knowledge and transfer that knowledge everywhere. So it's a win-win game if you know what you're doing.
I absolutely agree. I think the greatest strength of America is the accessibility of knowledge. I mean, believe it or not, I don't even listen to the man. I don't listen to folks in the manosphere like that. I don't listen to pretty much anybody outside the Black Brain Trust. And so I spend most of my time, if I am on YouTube and I'm listening to videos, I'm subscribed to damn near every school of the NIH on YouTube. And I listen to their videos, all of it, religiously, every day. I listen to at least one or two videos every day across the spectrum of biomedical research and health. And I understand that myself certainly as a medical student and a physician in training, and with my background as a nurse, I understand, I understand those intricacies of health and sort of how biomedical research is conducted. And so, my goal is to eventually, at some point, once I'm done with all this damn schooling and such, is to at one point to go to Africa and to think about, and to really attempt to get, a lot of these. I mean, it's a major problem in Africa. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity. It's a problem, but there's also a lot of opportunity, for Black people to get involved with building out health systems. I mean, we know that infrastructure is the single biggest problem in Africa, and that's across the board, whether that's electrical, dealing with natural resources, healthcare, even in the finance, even in the financial sector. I mean, we know those are problems.
Yep. Yep. And those are the discussions that they were having today. How do you healthcare startups, healthcare as a startup? Imagine that in the United States, there's no such, well, not that there's no such thing, but your legacy hospitals have pretty much dominance over a lot of, over the medicine field, so medical field.
And as more,
pretty locked down in the U.S. in terms of the funding, unless you get some major funding either through the NIH or one of these other major government entities, then you have to look at the private sector. And again, even in the private sector, as Nagone was saying earlier, that you don't have enough Black people that have these doctors, whether it's a PhD or MD or whatever, who have the ability to conduct research, who can do the research, who are also clinician scientists, folks who can do the research but also implement the research. You can take it from the bench to the bedside, as we say in healthcare.
And as more and more the population increases, we need to streamline. The goal is to streamline and make the resources more efficient. So they will need a lot of people, even as the population increases, to basically make healthcare more efficient, make agriculture more efficient. The goal as population increase is to increase the efficiency of how these services are being provided. So again, opportunities, problems, solutions, opportunities.
Yeah, and you have to come with a sound game plan. You can't just come over here empty-handed and think that somebody's going to give you a job. No, you got to come here and create the opportunity for yourself. You can't just expect somebody to give you a handout. It doesn't work that way.
And networking is important. So knowing how to actually talk and relate to people from other countries and other continents is important. Learning not to be divisive in ways, it's important.
We talked about that in a previous hangout, cultural intelligence. We talked about the importance of being culturally literate, understanding the world around you, the people. So like if you're in a country, do your intelligence gathering prior to you, or if you're going to go to a country, do your intelligence gathering prior to. What is customary? What is acceptable, from a customary standpoint? What are things that you do that may not be acceptable? Don't do that shit in public. Like, so for example, spitting. If in their custom and in their country, dude, that's just not a thing that they do, is just spit. Don't do it.
No, they don't do that. I mean, complex, the streets are immaculate. Okay, I don't see any speck of litter out there. No sort of broken bottles. You don't see needles anywhere. None of that exists out here.
Interesting, Mike. That's very, very interesting. How is it out there? How is it out there, by the way, brother?
Oh, the weather is great. You don't see any graffiti out here. That's unheard of, man. That type of stuff doesn't happen.
You're in Kigali, right?
Kigali.
Yeah, downtown.
Okay.
I gotta take off. I gotta get to a study session, but I gotta take off though. But I did just want to, just come in and just add something, because I didn't realize you were traveling until I saw your video. So I saw the stream. So I listened to the stream last night.
Yeah, cats didn't see this one coming. They didn't see this one coming.
So yeah, so no, man, that's what's up. That's good work, brother, man. Get everyone later.
Yeah, have a good one.
Peace.
Yeah, I met this guy, man, who's a startup advisor, man. He sounds just like Engineering Cannabis, man. I thought it was him. I said, I thought this dude was supposed to be in the United States.
You got jokes.
I thought it was you. He wore a shop.
I wish I was there, but nah. I wish I was, but nah.
He had on a South Pole. He had on a South Pole and wore some shacks too, and I was like, damn.
Oh shit.
Okay, now you really got jokes.
Hey, Mike, you say there's another one in March?
No, this a blockchain event down in South Africa in Johannesburg in March.
Oh wait, I think you posted that one. That's the event in March. Okay.
Yeah, and there's a another event happening, I think in Nigeria, like in September or something like that. I definitely want to hit it.
Mhm.
I haven't seen anything. There's another event coming for Kenya as well. But I gotta hit all five of those this year.
Uh,
Okay.
the good thing is, the one thing we should all start thinking is globally, not
Yep.
just in one space, but the global thought process.
Yep.
Opportunities. If you think more than where you are, a lot of opportunities will come your way. So
Yep.
we all
Mhm.
should be shifting our mind into a global market rather than just a domestic market itself.
So Mike,
Yeah,
what kind of companies are represented at this conference that's there? Like what is sort of like the theme around this?
I think we posted before, but Microsoft, uh,
Google was there,
yeah,
Microsoft,
yeah,
Google.
Google. Yep, there's a brother from Microsoft there. There's a couple people from Google. There's a couple people from maybe IBM. I know the
Mm.
brother from IBM that was there. So you
Couple
have
of
all your
banks, yeah, a couple of big banks were there, and
yep,
yeah,
yep.
I read them itinerary. It's their heavy hitters in there, real heavy
Okay.
hitters.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So it was worth it, man. I think we could probably do something similar here, but we have to actually get the backing. But it also has to be meaningful. But we do have to really evaluate what is the goal of what we're trying to do. So
Right.
sometimes I see a lot of people, they want to talk tech, but they don't actually know what they're talking about. Um, DE Raptors in the chat, he says Rwanda is the cleanest and most progressive state in Africa. He's right about that. There's not a speck of litter out there. With all these people walking around, not a speck of litter. People do not throw things on the ground and just walk away. It doesn't work like that.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
when I was in Turkey early in this week, um, they use micro transportation viciously. I mean, it's nuts how much micro transportation. Everybody has a scooter or a three-wheeler
Oh,
or a
word.
two-wheeler. It's massive, man. It's massive.
Well,
It's massive.
I know bikes have always been a thing, especially in the cities in Turkey. But yeah,
It's
okay, that's there.
I was in Istanbul, so it's massive out there. So
Shit.
that's the extent of it.
Okay. Damn, man, that's good shit, dude. Real
Yeah,
good
so there's a
shit.
lot of there's a lot of money involved in that. People pay per hour or whatever it is to rent these scooters out.
Hell yeah, there is, dude. It's really look. It's all about like if you can minimize maintenance costs and
Mhm.
like the operating costs. And man, I'll say this, man. Me and my buddy, man, the model that we got that we're gonna is try to institute for this grant. We apply for this grant here, man. Like it's once it's set up, it's pretty much going to run on its own for the most part. And
Yeah,
that's where if you can set it up like that, man, then yeah, you're in the green.
yeah, yeah. So bike sharing and stuff like that is gonna be really popular here because motorcycles are very costly in terms
Mm-hmm.
of maintenance and whatnot. You can hear people's cars. You can hear like the brakes squeaking because they need to change the pads because you're just grinding metal on metal. Um, and it's hard to get around transportation wise because they don't have a mass transit system.
Right.
And so using those what do you call those things?
What the like electric bikes?
No, give me a second.
The diaspora
A
assistance
gondola,
platform.
a gondola.
Oh, gondola. Okay.
Yeah, gondolas, man. I think that's going to be a very that's a massive infrastructure development layout, but that actually alleviates a lot of the transportation mass transit issues that they have here. So that's something I'm going to actually kind of look into, just kind of get a lay of the land while I'm
Mhm.
here, and then draw it out on paper and just kind of pitch it the next time I come through and say, hey, what about looking at this? Because buying up buses and stuff like that, you'll be replacing those buses every so many years because you're trying to keep up with the climate change initiative. But at the same time, uh, this gondola sort of system is going to last for eons. As long as 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 long as there's a use case for it, it's going to be in use, right? So,
Right.
and so
What,
having
what do you see like a modern version of a gondola, like a modernized, like an electrified version of it?
Let me share my screen real quick.
Okay.
Give people better perspective because they don't understand what I'm talking about. Share my screen. So something like this. So I know in California they have it for like Dodger Stadium. I know they do have it for that.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So this is what I'm talking about here. That sort of system is a mass transit system, right? You're carrying dozens of people at a time per car, all times of day, 24/7 without any sort of
Oh, this
stop
type
and
of
go.
thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And Africa needs things like this. They don't need more buses and stuff like that. I mean, you can use buses, but this is like foolproof, right? It requires less maintenance. You don't have to worry about taking a bus down and things of that nature, man. And these things can carry a dozen people. I saw one of them on here carried 24 people at a time, which is actually pretty significant.
Okay, yeah, this is like what they use for like ski lifts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mostly ski resorts use them because they need to get
Right.
back up the hill, right? But from a mass transit perspective, it's actually really cost effective to use it in place of like buses and trains, because
Yeah, you can reduce the number of the buses by just having that stuff like, basically travel vertically.
right,
because it travels right over traffic.
Right. And it travels over insurmountable roads, right? Roadway, right? So your terrain is actually the biggest challenge, but this gets over the terrain, right? So, and from a urban perspective, something like this would actually be very beneficial. It probably would cost them about $100 million. But when you think about the long-term aspect, this is going to last 50, 60, 70 years at best. It's the long-term investment aspect that should be made considerable.
You start out basically, you build along long paths, and then you start to then do like interconnection and smaller paths from there. So you scale it out. I mean, it's like you said, it's a long-term project.
Yeah.
Damn, I never really thought about this as a like a public transportation method. That's pretty slick.
And the continent, they're going to need a contractor or contract company to maintain this service. So it's going to be a huge construction, but also maintenance is going to also be involved in it. So they're going to hire somebody from a contractor to basically maintain this. So it's going to be a big contract.
Well, it's a civil engineering project, right? It's one of those things. It's a necessary evil that has to take place, right? Unless you're going to go to drones, you're not going to do drones right off the rip because you don't have a framework in place. Now, coincidentally, today this week they're having the Rwandan drone expo. So basically, drone races, drone demonstrations, and stuff like that is taking place this week. I don't have tickets to it, but it's happening in the same venue. With this, when you think about the tower that is used to erect these things, you put 5G radios on there. You have complete continuity. You're multi-purposing the infrastructure for various things.
You're making it multi-purpose.
Like every infrastructure in the continent that needs basically maintenance, this is going to need maintenance, and it's going to be a big. But what I'm saying is, individuals just need to know that such opportunities exist, And if you have a contracting firm here, as a African American or anybody, you can transfer those same skills to there and make a lot of more money than you make here. Basically, contracting and maintaining big infrastructures, because a lot of infrastructures will break down in the continent, and they will need someone to maintain it. And usually they take, when in some parts of Nigeria, they even take some Chinese, a lot of Chinese companies basically have those contracts to maintain them. But if it can go to an African American, it's more beneficial.
Yeah. I mean, Chinese haven't really mastered anything like this yet because they haven't had a use for it. So they haven't really mastered it. Kind of like the icebreakers that they're trying to put together. They haven't mastered those, so they don't really have a clear idea of as to how this would actually work culturally. But when you have things like this in place, and on the continent, you can go from one country to the next, traversing environments that may be protected by environmental protection agencies for wildlife, and you really don't have to dig up any sort of massive infrastructure. You can just try to lay down these towers and run the cable down it. That could be done in 2 years. That's a 2-year project. Tower, China just put together a hospital in 10 days. Make that make sense.
I was watching that whole live stream. I was checking in on Wuhan. That hospital they built, yeah, they literally just went. I literally they started from like the damn whatchamacallit, like just the bare rails and stuff on the ground all the way up.
Oh, Wuhan, the epicenter for the coronavirus?
Yeah, they built that shit in 10 days. They
Yeah.
live streamed the whole thing.
Yeah. They did. But yeah, Mike, I know you're enjoying Rwanda, so keep enjoying it and keep doing what you keep learning more about the continent, because there are a lot of opportunities down there. So
yeah, man. Hey, dude, I appreciate you for just making the move to get out there, cooperate a lot of what we talk about, feet on the ground, as we like to say. I appreciate you for that, fam. And
Yeah, you definitely.
let's do like some intel, man. See what's really good out there.
And collaboration, because I know I've looked through the panels. There are a lot of startups there with blockchain technology, especially some here that are going to the continent to look for opportunities.
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of startups that are doing blockchain, are trying to basically make their startup company more international. And
yeah, they're looking. They're looking at hemp manufacturing for goods. For textiles and stuff like that. Here, not a lot of people have a lot of experience with that, but that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, hemp for ropes and all, and textiles and clothing.
Yeah, hemp bags, hemp bags and jackets and
they will design it as more environmentally friendly than cotton, where you have to use chemical processes to basically make it more durable. Rather, hemp, you don't need that much chemical process. So they will basically tag it as more environmentally friendly and basically make more money on that aspect of hemp. So yeah, opportunities are rising from there.
Yeah, Jibba Jabba in the chat asked me, is there a biogas industry in Rwanda that hemp farmers can develop and implement, creating a self-supporting legacy system? I don't know about natural resources here. I haven't looked into it from a tech point. I'm here from a tech perspective, and not from the natural resources perspective. So I can't really speak to it. That's something that I'll have to ask about tomorrow, about the natural resources.
I mean, from my understanding, it largely just has to do with what the country itself states about the hemp plant, in terms of its legality and how it classifies it, and then
the legality of most countries in terms of hemp, it's still in a hazy gray state.
Right.
The only countries I know that allow even any form of cannabis, it's South Africa and Zimbabwe.
Well, Lesotho.
Yeah, and so those are the couple of countries that allow it. And they allow it in terms of medical, not recreational. And
but when we're talking about hemp, right, for
hemp,
for
and they
industrial
also
application,
most countries are not following the 0.03%. They're going with 0.02%. Like
Damn.
Europe and all that, they're following the 0.2% THC rather than 0.03%. So that's why I said you need to know internationally. So if you follow the American standard, you can basically sell it in Europe or Africa. So
Right.
if you have that knowledge that's not 0.3% but 0.32%, that knowledge can help you in terms of selling your products internationally. So these are stuff you need to know, aspects, knowing how the laws work in different countries.
Yep.
Exactly.
All right, let me shut this down. It's already past midnight here, so thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button if you've not already done so. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all your updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. Docket in the description beneath the video. Actually, we don't have a docket. It's just a recap of today's events. And I'll post the next one tomorrow.
Great stuff, Mike. Great stuff.
Hey, Mike, check
Shalom.
email.
All right.